Truth-telling, try and do that this time of year and forever. But also what-if season, which is preceding bold prediction season. We've got a lot of seasonal stuff around here at Pate State. On this particular campus, I don't care what they do on other campi. On this campus, we believe in tradition. We do the same things the same time every year. For instance, tonight we're jam-packed, high atop, what are we calling it today? Sun-drenched downtown Nashville, Tennessee on this Tuesday, April 8th, the year of our Lord 2025, proudly brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Around this time every year, I put out the question, just as I did earlier today. I put it out there. I ask you guys, what are the biggest what-ifs in college football this year? In other words, the kind of things that if it goes one way versus if it goes the other way could totally change the trajectory of the season, not just for one team, but maybe as a whole. We're going to start with Arch Manning in just a second. Like, think about the difference in how the entire season could go for everyone if Arch is great versus if he's terrible. Could probably be somewhere in between, but you get the drift. All the spring game debate, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. I'm not going to, do that whole thing again of should we have real spring games or not. But somebody, and you're not going to believe this, but sarcastically started to show themselves in the inbox today, and they started to kind of poke at those of us who do enjoy the concept of spring games. And they did it in what I find to be a growingly common way, whatever combination of words I try to use there. And it's one of those, well, you're still going to watch. It's not the end of the world. You're hearing that a lot. I'm hearing that a lot in college football right now. So I'll address it as best I can. As I said, we're going to continue to tell the truth tonight, this time about Ryan Day, head coach at Ohio State. I will talk about that. I've got a few thoughts on the old college football calendar. We're jam-packed. We wouldn't be on air if we weren't. They're watching us in Junction City, Kentucky. There is also a Junction City, Georgia, which I'm quite familiar with for reasons I cannot get into tonight. They're watching us in Tampa, Florida, Des Moines, Iowa, where I'll be tomorrow, by the way, and Lakewood, Washington. I always do that, Jesse and Colin. I always say, oh, I'm going to be at this place. I give no context. And I'm going to see some friends at Iowa State. I don't know what else to say. This is our last show until Sunday, so I'm just going up to Ames, Iowa. Whomst amongst us doesn't do that this time of spring? It's a beautiful time of year up there. Let's go. There's no huge breaking story on the show tonight, which means it's a great time to enter one of our favorite seasons that isn't the actual college football season. That is what-if season. Because why settle for real games when you can settle for hypotheticals this time of year? Because everybody's an idiot and a genius simultaneously this time of year. It's that kind of chaos in which I thrive, by the way. So we cranked up what-if season today. And Colton and The Point After, two different accounts there on Twitter, they hit us up. One of them said, what if Arch Manning is as good or better than most people think he is? And then the other one said, what if Arch just isn't the guy? See, this is the spirit of what-if season. That's beautiful. Well done, guys. We didn't have to orchestrate that or anything. So, Arch Manning could be the most important player in the country this year. If you think about the scalability of Texas if he's great, if you think about what kind of crash and burn story Texas would be if he's not great, because national championship contention is expected from Texas, so it's not a middle-of-the-road team. It's not like we're talking about a team you expect 7-5 from, and if the quarterback's bad, oh well, we didn't expect much from them. Anyway, you expect Texas to be in it. They are, I think, in the top 3 of the FanDuel odds right now. So everything was intentional with Arch Manning. This is the way I think about him right now, how I think the story will be told about him if he's successful. Let's go with glass half full. If he's successful, think about how the story's played out. He was intentional with everything that he did. Now, he can be. Arch Manning doesn't have to fill in the blank. He doesn't have to start right away. He doesn't have to make a ton of money in NIL. He didn't have to do anything. So he could afford to be intentional. He could afford to go sit behind Quinn Ewers for maybe 1 year, as it turns out 2 years, but still be ready when his number's called. And it's already been called. He's played a little bit, but he's been ready and he'll be ready, presumably. Okay, so the baseline, because the question there in the what if was, what if he's as good or better than people think he'll be? Well, what do people think? That's kind of like saying, what if he's underrated? Well, what's he rated? FanDuel's got him number 1 in the Heisman odds right now. No big deal, right? Texas, whomst he'll be the quarterback of, is in top 3 in the overall team odds to win the national title, depending on where you look. We use FanDuel in these parts. I think they're tied for second right now. So if that's the expectation, Heisman favorite, favorite to make the Final Four / national title game, and he's better than that, well, they're going to win a national championship in all likelihood. And if they don't, what you're probably looking at is you're probably looking at kind of a Georgia 2024 vibe, where the quarterback is not necessarily surrounded with highly functioning parts. Maybe the defense falls off a little bit. Maybe their running game's not great, but they're still plenty good enough in totality just because the quarterback's good. Now, in this scenario, Arch would be better than Carson Beck was last year, but you get my point there. But I would imagine Texas just wins the national title if he's better than people expect. However, in the true spirit of what if, there's a negative side. There's a side where everything crashes and burns, and that is the second one, which was, what if Arch just isn't the guy? Well, if he's not the guy, remember what Texas needs him to be. Remember the guy Texas needs him to be. They don't need Jaden Daniels 2.0 from a few years ago. They don't need even him to be like Cam Ward was for Miami last year. It's just not the way they've built the program. They're gonna recruit and start really high-profile quarterbacks, just like Ohio State tries to, but these places are not quarterback-centric. And so, if he's not even that guy, like if he's not even able to do what J.J. McCarthy was a couple of years ago, what Will Howard did last year, what Stetson Bennett did for Georgia, if he's not even able to play at that level, it's either because he was hurt or because truly it's one of the bigger busts in the modern era. And remember, when we talk about bust around here, that's on us more than it is on the player, because if he's not hurt and he just flat out isn't that good, it's hard to imagine that. But if he's just flat out not that good, well, that means he was overrated, right? Well, what was he rated? And who rated him? People other than Arch Manning rated him. So that would mean a cold, hard look in the mirror for a lot of people out here. Most likely, I think falls somewhere in between there. Most likely, he flashes, but he's inconsistent. If he falls short of expectation, let's just say we go glass half empty, or all the way empty in this case. I have a hard time believing he's just terrible. That's not going to happen. So if it is the case that Texas underachieves this year and Arch Manning underachieves, what you've probably seen is a few wow moments, but with too much inconsistency and mistakes and mistake-prone play mixed in there. And Texas loses a few games, loses 3 or 4 games even because of poor decision-making and inconsistent play and turnovers. And I could see that. But again, it's his third year there, you know? So I don't even expect, I think he's going to be really good. I think Texas will be really good this year. And if they're not, it'll probably be because of that. But it's a good what if. What's next? We got unloaded on with what ifs today, so I have no shortage here. One Chance hit us and said, what if Clemson gets back to the standard they once had? Now, kids, if you're 8 years old, we make the show family-friendly enough where you can listen. So, little Teddy, riding around out there in Prescott, Arizona, thank you for tuning in. What is Clemson? What was Clemson? You're young. You're young. Welcome. Welcome to your life. There's no turning back, as Tears for Fears would say. But what was the Clemson standard for people like you who are unfamiliar? Being right there is the best program in the country. Right there alongside Alabama 10 years ago, give or take a few years, as being a 1A, 1B, best programs in the country. And that was what they were. Now, they haven't fallen off a cliff. They've just fallen off a little bit. You know, they've come back to the pack a little bit. But this what if says, what if they return to that standard? You know, I'm really feeling this. I'm not ready to make predictions yet, but I am feeling, and have been feeling for a while, Clemson could be bottling up something special for this year. Now, here's the bonus, and this is worth a paper pop, I think. If you're still 8 years old listening, don't worry about all that. The bonus, as I wrote on this piece of paper here, is maybe B+ is good enough to win it all this year. So in other words, maybe Clemson's not right there on par with the 2015, 2016, 18 version of themselves, but maybe they're like a B+ in relation to that. Well, look around the country this year. Maybe there's not a 2015 Alabama, or maybe there's not a 2018 Alabama they have to be better than. Maybe there's just like a pretty good Alabama, or a pretty good Oregon, or a pretty good Fill in the blank. Notre Dame. Maybe like a B-plus version of Clemson relative to the standard is good enough. They are number one in returning production. In the ACC, no, in America, they return a ton. It's not a guarantee of anything. It is a guarantee that you've got a lot of consistency and continuity. You got a lot of guys who speak your language already. Klubnik, year 3 as a starter there, same offensive coordinator. That's a blessing. Oh, it's a blessing to have returning production and experience at quarterback with the same coordinator. Rare commodity this day and age. Wide receiver is the not-so-hidden story of this team because all the Clemson folks are talking about it, but I'm not quite sure if you live in Amarillo, Texas, if you're aware, Clemson once again has a top 5 receiver room in the country, and I saw certain friends of the program who shall remain nameless because they've been deadlifting too much on Instagram lately, claim that Clemson may have the best wide receiver room in the country this year. And even if he's wrong, they're up there. And that has been a drought. That room's been in drought for quite a while. And that right there, that room was dominant when they were at their best. But think about the defensive talent here. This depth chart in front of me, T.J. Parker at edge, Peter Woods, you got Brown and Woodaz at linebacker, Avion Terrell at corner. Could very well be one of the best teams in the country. Staff and organization, I don't think, if you've been paying attention, you can deny that they've leveled up there. You could watch running back during spring. You could watch like the second corner position during spring. It's not a complete team. It's not a perfect team. But again, we're not looking at a superpower team anywhere entering this year. They do have, by our internal numbers, the second toughest schedule in the ACC. They play LSU and South Carolina to begin and end the season, but they could flat out win the national title this year. Any kind of doubt I've had about Clemson has been beyond 25, because 25 is set up for them. And you look at Klubnik, the way he played to end the year last year, the way he played, it gives you a lot of hope. The way he played against SMU, the way he played in the Texas game, even though they lost, gives me a lot of hope. Knowing what he's going to have around him this year, that, yeah, maybe they will. Maybe that what-if does come to fruition. We've got one more what-if. This is just kind of getting us back into the swing of things. How about the wording here? What if the SEC's national championship drought continues? I remember playing Little League way back in the day up in Hamilton, Georgia, or down in Hamilton, Georgia for most of you. I had a buddy who got a hit, and then the guy behind him got a hit. And a kid in our dugout started yelling, "Look at that, it's a pattern." And one of my other buddies, Trey, lived in the next neighborhood over, said, "Hey, you know it has to happen more than 2 times for it to be a pattern, like 3, 4, 5. Then you start to establish a pattern. Right now, just a couple of things happen back to back." And it was the craziest thing. It like dawned on my friend for the first time. Well, similarly, is the SEC in a drought? A national championship, is that even a thing in college football? So they haven't won one in 2 years, is that right? And then Georgia won the 2, and then Michigan won 1, Ohio State won 1. So yes, we've got a drought, allegedly, your words not mine, of 2 years. Now, you could either call that SEC homerism or basic common sense. But we did flip through the old Rolodex today and look back in the annals of college football. Make sure you go long on the A there. You know, the last time that the SEC went 3 or more years without winning a national championship was 99 through 02. So it has been a long time. Are they in a drought? Well, by that standard, yeah, but not really. Having said that, for fun, in the interest of fairness in what-if season, went over to FanDuel. I looked at the top 18. It's a nice round number. The SEC has 11 of the top 18 in the odds to win the national championship. Now, that could be valid. Let's just assume for a second FanDuel nailed it. They nailed the exact right power ratings, not rankings, power ratings. There is a difference for this upcoming season, and the SEC really does have 11 of the top 18 teams in the country. Well, that could be true, and they still not win the national title. Because what if Ohio State's the best team in the country again at the end of the year? What if Oregon is? What if Penn State is? What if Notre Dame is? What if Clemson is? What if USC is? I said it just to make sure you were paying attention. But you get my point. You could have 17 of the top 18 teams in the country. You got a big conference there. But if you don't have number 1, it doesn't really matter as it relates to the drought. Here's what will happen. The Danny Cannells of the world are hurting right now because of what just happened in basketball. So you throw your enemy out the window, and they're just down in the parking lot doing push-ups. So as the season draws closer, and as the pressure builds for the SEC to hashtag end the drought, the Cannells of the world, you'll hear this right here, and that's not a knock. That's him coming back up the stairs, and he will be ready. They will be ready. It's not that they're out in full force. It's that so many of you fall for it. So many of you fall for it. I've got thoughts on anyone who chants the name of a conference. I've always thought it was a little weird, but it happens, you know. So don't stop. Don't let me stop you. Hey, I love freight trains. People think that's weird. Who cares if people think you're weird? If you want to chant SEC, chant it. Hey, if I was around back in the Southwest Conference days, I would probably chant SWC. I'd certainly chant Sherwood Blunt. At the very least, I would chant Trans A&M. So it's so many references, so many Pony Excess references. But there's no drought, is my point there. There's no drought. And I would even say 3 years in a row is no drought. Now, if the SEC doesn't have a team in the Final Four, then we could start throwing around a D word. Then we could start throwing around drought. Academy Sports and Outdoors, the A word, if you will. If they ever need to shorten the name of the store, the A word, I think would probably not pass the shareholder smell test per se, but I still think it's catchy. So hit Alex up, Jesse, just see what they think about it. In the meantime, as far as we know, they are still called Academy. That's what it says on the front of every store. But forget about what it says on the front. Go inside and find out what they have inside, because they got everything you need to enjoy outdoors this time of year, given that it stopped raining. No, even if it's raining, umbrellas, canopies and tents, they got it all in there. Not to mention copious amounts of rain gear, but fishing gear, camping gear, grilling equipment, baseball, football, soccer, basketball. I know most of you need this anyway, so check out Academy. They make the show free of charge for you to enjoy, which is a good thing, because who in the world wants to pay for this? Academy did. Also academy.com if you cannot get there in person. Let's move on. It's not just what-if season around here. There's a lot going on. I got all kinds of stuff in the stack of papers in front of me. So I think we had a question about this, but honestly, I was going to talk about it either way. We had a question from a viewer. He said, when you're commissioner, will you move the college football season so we can have football year-round? Well, we've got football year-round. They're playing football right now. I think the UFL is playing football right now. It's there. If you want it, it's there. I'm not so sure you want college football year-round. Now, I can meet you halfway. I definitely got proposals for making college football year-round in a way. I just don't necessarily know that we're going to be, watching a real-life college football game in March. Now, I did say a long time ago that I had a bold take that is so bold I wasn't ever ready to share it on air, and it has to do with this. Maybe I'll share it at the end of this segment. Maybe I'll share it. I still don't think it's ready for public consumption, but it's a Thursday or it's a Tuesday night in early April, so I may toss you guys a carrot here for tuning in. There's nothing wrong with a little scarcity. There's nothing wrong. It doesn't have to be year-round. College football doesn't have to be year-round. I've heard plans before of maybe moving the FCS to the spring, and there's pros and cons there, or maybe even moving G5 seasons to the spring. Here's the problem with that. Think about it logically. If we had the G5 playing in the spring, I'd watch. I'm not saying I wouldn't watch, but we're watching Tulane here. Okay, so if Tulane was gearing up to start the season the first week of February, I guess is when we started. Well, that would mean their preseason camp is January, right? They come out of Christmas break and they start what we would call fall camp. They would call winter camp, I guess. But the problem is, about that time, South Carolina season is ending. Texas A&M season's ending. Arizona State's wrapping up. Well, where do you think they're going for portal additions? They're still going to the G5. And so Tulane could be sitting there week 2 of preseason camp, and all of a sudden their tailback says, I'm gone. Now, it's already bad enough that people bail on you after spring ball in the current landscape, but these would be people bailing on you in preseason. So I'm not sure I would want that. Here's what I can do, though. I can fill the calendar with college football-related events. For example, I have been a proponent and am continuing to be a proponent of delaying the schedule release for the upcoming season until late February of that year. And I used to think we'd get pushback from coaches on this, but when we were at Georgia 2 weeks ago, I tossed this to Kirby. I said, pretend, hypothetically, that you didn't get your schedule for that upcoming year until right before you open spring camp. Would that hurt you? He said, no, I don't care. The only thing it would affect is logistics. Like we've got to plan travel and people have to plan travel and you got to book blocks in hotels and stuff like that. So yeah, that may be tough operationally, but coaching-wise, I couldn't care less. We could get our schedule after spring ball and I'd be okay. So we got that endorsement. So the coaching complaint part is out of the way. Here's what I'd love to do. I think it's stupid we don't do this. I'd love to have the NFL playoffs conclude, Super Bowl's wrapped up, go about another week, and late February, right before most people are opening spring camp, release the schedule for the upcoming year. It could be a multi-day event. Imagine that. Imagine you don't know anything. You probably know your out-of-conference games, but I would argue you could have inter-conference partnerships where even your out-of-conference schedule is not set in stone. I know there's a lot of future schedules that are already planned out. Just scrap them, I guess is my best answer to that. Because, I mean, some of you have scheduled games into the 2030s, which probably won't happen anyway, judging by what history has taught us. Scrap them all, and I just tell you what your schedule is in late February, early March. I'd love that. I would also love to do what we've been talking about. I would love to give you the option to play a real spring game. So that gives me two really big events in the late winter, early spring portion of the year. But I'll tell you, I don't think I would try and artificially manufacture any big events in May or June. Like once you get out of April and everyone's wrapped up for spring, you know that your media day season's kind of coming in July, and shortly thereafter, fall camp opens. May and June, look, you need to have a wedding? I'm doing it. Have it in May. You need to have a baby? You guys know how that stuff happens. If you don't, DM me. I'll talk to you more about it off air. But you can time it up. You can subtract 9 months from May and June. You pretty well know how that works. If you need to take a vacation, May and June, wonderful. If you need to do home repair, if you need to move, that's what May and June is for. And then you lock in mid-July if the media day circuit is for you. If you don't enjoy talking, stay on the beach through July. But August, you know, we're dialed in. We do this show year-round, so we don't ever really take a vacation. But the schedule release event, I would love to do that. I don't know why we don't do it that way. The NFL gets it. I don't know why we don't get that. And then also just allowing real spring games, allowing the option for it, that alone would sort of overhaul spring. Because right now what you have in the aggregate is you have people losing interest in spring because they know there's not that real spring game at the end of the tunnel, so why even get excited about spring? And also, the SEC, where people disproportionately are more passionate about spring football, they had the audacity to go get good in basketball, so the attention has been fractured, and it's been splintered in the SEC. It's aggravated me. This is not a basketball show. So I just assume Bama and Auburn not be in the Elite Eight. We can block that out of the Birmingham and Montgomery market so they don't get mad. But I want to talk about spring football, and there hasn't been as big a market for it this spring. What do you know? They're watching us in Huntsville, Alabama. Also, New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, and Flagstaff, Arizona. We appreciate you guys being tuned in. Check this out. How beautiful is that can of Zevia? We have not ever, to my knowledge, cracked a vanilla cola flavored Zevia on air. Zero sugar, as always. That's really good, though. I don't know that I've tried vanilla cola. I may have one other time. That stuff's really good. A couple of you had touted the vanilla cola to me, and I had not tasted it. We did ginger ale last week. We're on a roll. We are not cheating on cream soda. Cream soda will always be our ride or die, but vanilla cola, not a bad substitute here. Not a bad. We've got depth, is what I'm trying to tell you. Zevia's got really good depth. Hopefully Notre Dame does too. Segway alert. Segway alert. Larry from Pacific Beach, California hit us. He said, what are the chances that Notre Dame is a perennial national title contender after they made it to the game last year? It feels like a switch has been flipped to some degree with Marcus Freeman. Well, I will agree. It did feel like a switch got flipped. Let's just be careful here. Think about what we're asking. What we're asking is something that up until about 5 minutes ago, a vast majority of the college football public had said was impossible. And that is for Notre Dame to perennially compete for the national championship in the modern era of college football. Now, if you're a Notre Dame fan, of course you hope Larry's right. Of course you hope a switch got flipped. And I do not doubt that there's serious positive momentum with the program, but you can have positive momentum and still throw an 8-4 season in there every now and then. And I think that goes for pretty much every program. The best of the best out there. In the this point moving forward era of college football, because of how much thinner the rosters are depth-wise, I don't know that anyone's just going to fly at the 10.5 or 11 wins on average per year level anymore. I don't think that's reality. So that goes for Notre Dame, but that goes for Georgia. That goes for Notre Dame, but that goes for Ohio State. That goes for everybody. However, I will confidently tell you that a couple of weeks ago, we were doing a quarterback segment on the show, and I mentioned Steve Angeli. Now, I did it pretty haphazardly, wouldn't you say, Jesse and Colin? I said Steve Angeli, and look, we got feedback from Notre Dame that he's not even the favorite to be the starter. And I said, well, I didn't lock it in. I just said, that's kind of a guy we've got our eye on. And that was the extent of it for me. McElroy took it 14 steps further. If Steve Angeli is a drug, our boy Greg McElroy is on it. Listen to this.
I've seen Steve Angeli thrust into action against a ferocious pass rush in Penn State and one of the best defenses in the country. I saw Steve Angeli go into the lineup and just methodically, right down the field, accurately carving up a defense. Who's to say that Steve Angeli's ceiling, when the real lights are on, isn't outrageously high? We've seen him make one start, and it was a couple years ago. What if, when we fast forward to this year, Steve Angeli has some awakening, and all of a sudden he's the second coming of Joe Burrow? You remember now, Joe Burrow at Ohio State was just a guy. In his first year at LSU, he was just a guy. Well, Steve Angeli, up to this point of his career, solid, just a guy. But maybe there's another level in there that we just don't know about. Because when the game flipped in Joe Burrow's final season, when he got a chance to run an offense that was built for him, look what happened. Maybe that's in there for Steve Angeli.
If you had trouble hearing, McElroy just, I believe, guaranteed Notre Dame win the national title this year. He did say, I think it's a direct quote, Angeli is Joe Burrow 2.0. Think I overheard him say Arch Manning who? Angeli will make us say Arch Manning who? His words, not mine. It's crazy. So let's just say that Angeli's a fraction of that, just a mere fraction of Joe Burrow reincarnated. Hey, things could be really interesting up there this year. They've got an improved wide receiver core. Got to reload a line. Do I want to use? Yeah, I'll use the word. Got to reload on the line of scrimmage, don't we all? Elite at running back. But, we're talking, I think, more about the overall construct of the program. Here's what I'm thinking. So my stance on this is I'm okay on Notre Dame. Like, I'm fairly high on them. I'm not going to back them into the corner. If you guys better be right back there in that national championship game or you have failed Marcus Freeman. No, he hadn't. Just be in the hunt. Give yourself a puncher's chance. And by modern standards, you're running a really high-level program. Now, here's what you don't want. You don't want to fall flat on your face. You don't want to go 8-4, 7-5. And the reason's obvious. First off, because it's not good to lose. But then secondly, when people are grading Marcus Freeman, it feels like we're so far away from them losing to, who in the world did they lose to last year? Northern Illinois? Yeah, it feels like ancient history, but it's not. That's the same team that allowed themselves to lose to Northern Illinois last year. But what they did is they turned a negative into a positive. Now, that's a hallmark of really solid culture, and that's great if it never happens again. But, what happens if you go in this year and let's just say you go 8-4? It's just a kind of okay year, but nothing special. And that's how you follow up playing for a national championship. Well, here's what happens. If you're like Kirby Smart, people just say, oh, well, finally you had a down year. If you're Ryan Day, well, it sucks, but you won the national title last year. But if you're Freeman, you hadn't done that yet, and you don't have the Kirby Smart level equity. So what they do is they start saying, maybe Al Golden did mean a little bit more to that team than we thought. Well, he won the Broyles Award for best assistant coach in the country. So I think most people realize he was a really valuable commodity as DC. And then there will be a chorus as well of, Chad Bowden, GM, left. Maybe he was the secret sauce. And you know what? You're much better off not having to listen to that. So for many reasons, and this is exclusive advice that I am delivering Marcus Freeman on this show tonight, it is my advice that Notre Dame should try and win this year. And if I hear anyone copy that, we're coming for you. Because that is intellectual property exclusively provided on this show, by this show, for this show, and Marcus Freeman. And he hasn't said thank you, but you're welcome in advance, Coach. Quick Trip. I don't know if you've ever been there, Marcus Freeman or anyone, but beautiful this time of year. We had a viewer check in from New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. Yeah. I don't know what the weather's like there. I mean, it snowed in Lubbock the other day, so I imagine it's still pretty cold up there. And I don't know if they have Quick Trip up there either, but I can tell you it's beautiful at Quick Trip this time of year. If you guys want to vacay, come down towards where I am, and I assure you we've got a lot of them down here. Now listen, the cold brew on tap has taken off. It's not a secret anymore. Everybody's finding out about the cold brew on tap, so much so that I'm getting mixed reports that some of you are taking up parking spots at the gas pumps, even though you're 3/4 of the way full, just so you can go in and try the cold brew on tap. And we welcome that. We just ask that you use regular parking spots. You know, don't be a derelict. We don't need that kind of activity. There are other C-stores, convenience store. It's just industry lingo. There are other C-stores for that ratchetness. We don't need that at Quick Trip. We are a classy outfit at Quick Trip with plenty of great food on rollers once you walk in. There's a strong rumor some of it could appear at the Pate State wedding. First of its kind, Pate State wedding. Let's move along. Debate's still in fashion these days in sports media. There is a debate that is raging out there on our streets. And Sam hit me. Sam, just trying to be antagonistic, he hit us and he said, not everything is a crisis. Is college football really about to die if we lose spring games? People think the sport changing is going to kill it, but I'm not there yet. Well, Sam, guess what? You are right. Is that what you wanted to hear, Sam? Because if it is, it's a good night for you. You're right. We could take away every spring game, and it would not kill college football. And I get the vibe from your perspective, Sam, that once we admit that, dust off our hands, move on. But I would like you to, Sam, let me grab the back of your shirt. Let me pull you back over here. Sam, could I take you 2 or 3 steps further down the road of logic here? So this is obviously in response to a lot of people debating about spring games, and some programs are either canceling them outright, they're not broadcasting them publicly, they're doing a watered-down version, which isn't new. People have done that for a while. I was at a scrimmage last week, and I assure you, that program got after it and tackled to the ground all day, and it was fairly physical and violent, and none of that will be seen when they play their spring game, whenever they actually play their spring game. So that's not a new concept. However, Steve, I want to ask you, when you say canceling spring games won't kill college football, what are you really saying? Are you really suggesting that anyone ever thought that? I am a big proponent of spring games. So let's use me as an example. You're talking to me. Everyone else just happens to be watching, but it's you and I, Steve. I wish everyone played a legitimate spring game, and it was broadcast on national TV, and the fans could pack the stands, and it was either free or really, really, really cheap to get in, and we could all just have it our way in spring. I wish that was the case. It used to be that way. It's not that way so much anymore, but I've never suggested it's killing the sport. But I would also suggest it's not helping the sport. What is the sport? The sport is really big. And why is the sport big? The sport is big because a ton of people care about it. Those people are fans. The players could still play the game. The coaches could still coach the game. But if no one watched, there wouldn't be nearly as lucrative an opportunity to play or coach the game as there is because of fan engagement. So because a lot of us feel the way we do about the game, it matters a whole lot. And it's worth a whole lot if you're good at it, coaching it or playing it. But the whole, it won't kill you. You ever heard someone say that? A lot of times if you're on a diet and there's junk food in front of you, someone in the back of the room, oh, eat it. It won't kill you. You're committed to getting in shape. You're thinking about skipping the gym. Oh, you can miss a workout. It won't kill you. It won't kill you is almost always a phrase that is used to excuse poor decision making right before a poor decision is made. And that's kind of happening a lot in college football. There's a lot going on right now. A lot of decisions being made, a lot of moves being made, and each individual move, there's someone out there who got access to a microphone and they want to sound like they're intellectually superior to the rest of the room, and they're either telling you one of two things. Either it won't kill college football, or, well, you're going to watch anyway. Yeah, I probably am. You got me, man. I probably am. But Steve, I want to talk to you. I know a lot of people feel this way, so I'm not just talking to Steve. I want to ask you, honestly, I'll give you my answer. Why do you love college football? Why do you love it? I don't doubt you love it. Most people, even if you agree or disagree with me on this, you love college football. You wouldn't be watching a college football show in April if you didn't love college football. So why do you love it? Why don't you feel that way about other sports? My answer is because from the time I was a kid, I realized that there was more to a college football team than just the 12 games on the field during the fall. There was a lot culturally. There was a lot woven into the DNA of the South where I grew up, but it's not exclusive to the South, certainly not. There are people in Pullman, Washington that feel the same way about Washington State football as there are people in Gainesville that feel about Florida football. So I realized there's a lot about the emotional connectivity between person and college football as a sport and college football programs individually that makes college football unique. It's not that there aren't passionate NFL fans or Major League Baseball fans, NBA, whatnot. I just think college football is one of one in that department. Because of that, there are several layers that form that connectivity. And I'll just speak from personal experience. I grew up, like I said, in the South, so I watched this a lot every spring. I was around and grew up with families that could not afford season tickets to Auburn or Georgia or Alabama or Florida. That's kind of the area that I'm growing up. That included us. But I'll tell you what we could afford. If they were going to open Sanford Stadium or Bryant-Denny Stadium or Jordan-Hare Stadium for free for the spring game, we could afford gas to go up there or over there and back. And you're talking about, I mean, you ever been on the campus of Auburn University in early April? Have you seen what that place looks like? You understand, like, when the trees start to bloom again, and you as a little kid get to go experience, a lot of you are with your dad, a lot of you are with your mom, a lot of you are not just there for a spring game. You probably don't even remember the outcome of the spring game, but 20 years later, you remember walking around campus, and they're showing you, hey, I went to class in this hall so-and-so years ago. Hey, you see that name there on the Jumbotron? When I went here, he was a classmate of mine. There is something being formed between you, a kid, in your formative years, and that university. It could be Auburn, but it could be Ohio State, but it could be Arizona. It's not the end of the world if that experience is taken away, but I remember when I was a kid, I remember it was like at the tail end of when baseball was playing playoff games and World Series games in the daytime. I kind of came along in the broadcast era where they were playing everything at night to maximize television viewership and drive ad revenue. And I remember hearing the older folks tell stories about how, yeah, you're having to wait until 8:38 p.m. for first pitch of Game 2 of the World Series, but did you know they used to play World Series games in the middle of the day? And I remember hearing them say, you know, that's when kids could stay up and they could watch the entire game. And it made sense to me then because I had to go to bed before the games were over. And I thought, man, kids in the previous generation were lucky. They got to watch World Series games during the day. Did it kill baseball to move World Series games to the night? Of course it didn't. But did they lose a little bit of the connectivity of the upcoming young generation and their product because they moved to primetime? Yes, they did. They did. I would argue now, my generation and the generation younger than me has far less an emotional attachment to the sport of baseball in this country because of moves like that Major League Baseball made. They made more money. They profited more in the short term, at the very least. But at what expense? I'd ask the same thing about college football. You're making a lot of decisions right now. No one of them is going to be the death blow. I did Hublick's show yesterday, not at the scheduled time, but I'll let him explain why. But eventually, we got around to talking about this. And it's so funny because the people who ask these questions mockingly are the easiest to mock. No one out here is suggesting any one of these things is a death blow to college football. No one's threatening to stop watching. If you're a hardcore fan, we're watching until the very end. I'm watching until they literally rip me away from the TV or the sport just dissolves and it is no more. But not everyone's me. Not everyone's a P1 viewer or a P2 viewer. Some of them are P3, P4. There are a lot of people out there who watch the national championship game, a couple of the big games per year. Couldn't tell you who the head coach at UNLV is to save their lives. Dan Mullen, by the way. Those people, that layer of public interest, when that starts to erode away, then what? And then when the second layer, it's like the earth. You don't get to the core until you go through several layers, but those layers are the first ones that you start to lose. And once you get there, it's too late. I don't mean for this to be doom and gloomish or anything. We did that a couple of weeks ago, but there is no one thing that's the death blow to college football. Everybody knows that. But, there is no one donut that you eat that completely wrecks your diet. There is no 1 degrees change, if it's 71 in the room right now, that makes the room freezing. But if I press that button one time a day over a 2-week period, and you've been on vacation, and you come back, it feels like you could hang meat in the office. It's freezing in here. What happened? Well, it got cold because we kept pressing the same button the same way over and over again. 20 years from now, you look at college football. Well, what happened to college football, man? Well, people kept pressing the same wrong buttons over and over again. So, you can either be infantile and make fun of people who make a big deal about losing a spring game, or you can understand it's kind of one page in a book they really love that they'd just as soon not see ripped out. That's the way I look at the spring game debate. Let's move along. Move along. Instead of talking about spring games, we're debating spring games. Let me get a chug of water. We have to hydrate after speaking about such things. Ryan Day. Colin, that's not a great endpoint. Here's a great endpoint for you. What's the truth about Ryan Day? The Truth Teller series continues around here. We've been trying to tell the truth a lot. I want to tell the truth about Ryan Day. I have a sentence written on the piece of paper here in front of me, and it says, the truth about Ryan Day hasn't changed whatsoever recently, which I know will draw disagreement. Because it looks like a lot has changed about Ryan Day recently. And I will grant you his Wikipedia change has been evident. His resume change has been evident. He is a national championship winning head coach now. He wasn't that this time 8 months ago. So a lot's changed, Josh. Well, that's true. However, I don't feel like he's any different a coach today than he was 5 months ago, 10 months ago. Honestly, I feel about the same as I did about him 2 years ago. But it is true. If you're strictly results-oriented, yes, the truth about Ryan Day has changed. It'd be really fun if we were in a debate class, which we have at Pate State. You can major in debate here. But if we were presenting Ryan Day as the debate topic in class, it'd be so fun. Because if you were halfway decent at debate, you just choose whichever side. In fact, you could give your opponent the option. Do you want to be pro or anti-Ryan Day? I'll just take the other side because it's so easy. It's so easy. Here's how it would sound. Someone would say, Ryan Day's proven himself now. He's won the national championship. He's erased all doubt. And I could say, well, yeah, but by the old standard, he would have fallen flat on his face again last year. They lost 2 games in the regular season. The only thing that saved him was he got to back in because of a new playoff format and then went on a hot streak that they should have looked like all year. And then you say, yeah, but that doesn't matter. Everyone played by the same rules. He won a championship that everyone had equal access to. And I would say, yeah, he sure did. But doesn't it feel a little hollow? You've still got that hole in your chest here that can only be filled by beating your rival, which he's failed to do for the better part of half a decade, which is a really, really extreme way to say 4 years. better part of half a decade. That's like saying a quarter of $1,000. Well, it's $250, man. A quarter of $1,000, though, sounds so much better. Anyway, you get the point there. We could trash Ryan Day, we could praise Ryan Day, we could be the same person. I remember a couple of years ago down there in the Peach Bowl, New Year's Eve, right there at the stroke of midnight, still one of the wildest things about that game was they missed that field goal at 12 midnight. 12:31 turns into 1-1, and Ohio State misses that field goal. If they hit the field goal, they go on to, I would guess, beat TCU. And they win the national title a couple of years ago. And people are saying what they're saying about him now 2 years ago. Point being, Ryan Day's just been a stud for a long time to me. And he's had people, because you care about different things maybe, which is your prerogative, they've doubted him. They've called him into question. Harbaugh said what he said about him. I don't know. I've just believed in his process. I've believed in the way they go about doing things. I don't know how you deny it. Of course, like the win-loss stuff, he's 70-10. He's entering year 7. Speaking of the number 7, you know, in 7 years, he'll still be younger than Nick Saban was when Saban won his first title. He's 46 years old. Saban was 53, I think, or 52, 53, when he won his first of 7 national titles. So just to give you an idea, I say that about Lanning a lot too. All these guys who are in their late 30s, early 40s, and people are already calling them busts or labeling them. Like the greatest of all time was 53 when he won his first title. And that's not a story from the 40s. That's a story from the 2000s and teens and 20s. I do think, though, whatever you think about Ryan Day, whatever you think about last season, up to the Michigan game, whatever you think about that, I think even his detractors have to admit it's an all-time gut check moment. Whether you think it's pathetic they lost to Michigan or whatever, I don't care. But from the time the clock hit zeros, you can't change anything about it. So they just lost to Michigan. Their season's not over. They're going to go to the playoff. And to think about, no matter how much talent you have in the room, how hard it was to get that organization back up, knowing you just got your heart ripped out, and to get them ready to play like they didn't just waltz into the playoff and go like autopilot. They played, like their lives depended on it. That's how they played. They played in a manner that made everyone say, where was that against Michigan? Had you done this against Michigan, then you wouldn't have had a problem against them. That's a gut check moment. And I would imagine it, in fact, I don't have to imagine it. I know it was a gut check for him personally. It was a gut check for the family. Again, his haters have to admit that. I don't know what the haters are really saying right now at this particular point in time, but the truth about Ryan Day, I may be a little different on this, is I don't really feel much different about him than I have for a while because I was really not down on him. But then you get to this point, and so then you get to see him this upcoming year, and you get to see him deal for the first time with fighting complacency. But the good news for them is so much of that team left, as we've talked about. You got a bunch of people who are going to start or at the very least contribute for them this year that did not play an instrumental role in winning that national title last year, which just means you get to, figuratively, it's 2025, so figuratively, you get to grab folks by the shirt sleeve in the locker room and say, what do you think you've accomplished? If you got a bunch of returning starters, it's harder to do that. Now, as much as we may believe that Ohio State has to hit reset in many ways, our friends at FanDuel, as Colin is showing you on the screen right now, got him as the favorite to win a national championship this year. You heard me right. The favorite to win the whole thing. And that is not just for cosmetics. That's not just something that looks cute on the screen. You guys can go to FanDuel right now and you can wager that. You can wager on that if you want to. Me personally, let me tell you what I did last night. Congrats to Florida for winning the national title last night. I did not get a wager down before the game. I wanted to live bet it. Jesse, do you remember tip-off? Was Florida a slight favorite? Do you remember? Believe so. Okay. Thank you, Jesse. He believes so. I believe so as well. Anyway, irregardless, as Meemaw would say, about 10, 12 minutes to go in the game, Florida's plus 5.5 live. They were down 10. They're plus 5.5 live. And you can just, good and well Houston's not winning that thing by double digits. So there is a last 10 minute of the game Florida charge coming. And look, If anyone knows college basketball, I do. That's really the main reason people tune into this show. Late tip, as we like to call the show back in the day. So I got down on Florida plus 5.5. And promptly, they go on a run, and they take the lead, and they win it. And I put out what I feel is some of my best work afterwards. It's on the Twitters, at Josh Pate CFB. It's Cannell related. You just have to go check it out. But FanDuel was where I wagered. This is what I was trying to tell you. I got them plus 5.5 live over there. Appreciate them. Now that college basketball season's over, if you want action on a college sport, most likely you're looking at football, they've got no shortage of options over there for you. The exclusive odds provider of the show, and we appreciate them. So what we've been doing in spring, because it's spring, is we've been taking questions that we get that aren't necessarily college football related, and we try and balance them. We put them in the very back of the show. Because one of the most common requests we get is to talk about stuff that's not necessarily related to college football, and it's a bunch of different stuff. And I think to myself, well, if I listened to this show, I would be listening for college football. However, I know we've got a massive, evergreen, year-round audience that feels ownership in the show. So sometimes we'll put stuff at the very end. I do it at the very end so that if you don't care about the stuff, you can tune out. But we had a question from Ralph, and he said, I've been watching since day one. I want to congratulate you on what you've done with the show. How do you balance keeping on track of what you've done to get here versus innovating and looking to do new things both with the show and with your career? Very appreciative, Ralph, of what you said. I think it's very easy to balance when this is all you do all day. So we're in it. We immerse ourselves in college football and college football related matters. Got a really good staff. So they stay on top of stuff so you don't have to, you don't have to be over everyone's shoulder. But also, you just shut up and listen. You listen to your audience. I don't necessarily know that that's revolutionary, but that's what we do. So there are things we'll try out every now and then, and you guys give us feedback. You don't like it, we don't do it. And then there's other stuff, we'll do it every now and then, and you'll say, give us more of that, so we'll give you more of that. It's very simple, but I think the core of it is you got to remain authentic, and you got to keep doing what it is people want. One of the best early teaching points I got, I was doing local radio a long time ago, and I did a show one day, and you could just tell I did a bunch of stuff on the show I wanted to talk about. To me, it was a great show. But the program director hit me and said, you stacked the show for yourself today. And he was right. I didn't even know what stacked meant, but he was right. And I said, yeah. He said, well, you're not the audience. You're not the reason you're on air. They are. You got to stack the show for the audience. And ever since then, I've done that. I've stacked the show for the audience. So a lot of stuff I may care about that rarely makes it on the show because of that. But Ralph, to answer your question, we keep doing that. You don't try and overthink the room. When I think innovation, I think getting a lot smarter with some of the technical aspects and behind the scenes stuff. But as far as overhauling the show, I'll tell you what we do now that we have the access to do it is we don't come off the road all year. I'm on the road all spring. I'm talking to as many people as we can all spring, going to as many practices as we can all spring. I'll go to another couple this week. That's a huge blessing. That's all, they don't have to do that for us, and yet we got plenty good enough relationships with most of these places where they welcome us in. And there's a trust factor there, obviously, that we won't run our mouths about what we see, but it does inform the conversation to where hopefully we make egregious errors less and less in predictions. But outside of that, you just kind of keep doing what you're doing. That doesn't mean being complacent at all. We want to be the best college football show there is. But it does mean not getting your product to a point where a lot of folks love it and then changing everything about it. Why would we do that? I especially feel that way about the wardrobe, obviously. So I appreciate that, Ralph, and we get a lot of that privately, but just wanted to share that one. All right, next show is Sunday. I have been told by our friends over at Augusta National that they do plan on wrapping the Masters up in time for us to go on air. Now, they've never lied to us before. It would be a first if they did it this year. I'm told the sun is roughly going to set in Augusta this year, the same time it does every year, around this time in April. So we will do a show pretty much at the normal time, Sunday. I'm going to be on the road the rest of the week. Josh Pate, CFB. Instagram especially. The story is a really good place to follow us there. Not all of it makes it on the show. So appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your week. For Director Colin, producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. Take care and God bless.